Hello, everyone, and welcome to Industrial Ethernet Week 3. This is such an exciting event for us. It's our third annual event, and we've seen the number of participants and registrants grow each year over year. So we're so excited to see the growth of this week, and then also just the level of interest. We've also taken your feedback from previous sessions and tried to incorporate it here. So we're excited to come this year and talk about industrial Ethernet. It's so fun to have players across all of the ecosystem be in this event with us together, from suppliers and customers and partners, even outside consultants and vendors are all going to be participating in this week. So what do we have in front of us? We are going to spend the next few days to talk about industrial Ethernet and get into some of the nitty-gritty for how industrial Ethernet is going to impact our future. Today, we're going to spend almost the entire day on sustainability. And I know sustainability is a big word for a lot of us, and we all hear it. But what does it mean? How is it defined? And what can we do to impact our products and our ecosystem from a sustainability perspective? It is interesting to see how much of our sustainability, all much as the amount of our carbon emissions are actually generated, not from inside our four walls, but outside. And there's a lot we can be doing to impact that. Also, on the sustainability front, what are some of the problems that we're facing when it comes to design? And so we're going to have two panel discussions on some of the problems that are created and what are ways that we see solutions coming about to solve this as well. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about simplification and ease of installation. This is all about, if you can picture the amount of data that we're going to continue to consume for the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years, I think it's pretty clear that this rate of growth is going to be exponential. And the amount of sensors and cameras and processing power that's all going to be consuming data is going to grow. And so our ability to be able to get customers up and running faster, being able to order parts faster, being able to get everything assembled faster and into use faster is going to be pretty critical for success. So we have a full day dedicated towards ease of installation and simplification of design. And then lastly, on Thursday, we're going to be covering innovation. What are some of the problems that we continue to see that will need to be solved? Artificial intelligence is by sure the biggest driver that we see. I think we've probably all been surprised, maybe even over the last 12 months, on how quickly the pace of artificial intelligence is impacting us and our future. And so what are going to be the needs from our technology in solving this problem? And so we'll be talking about the upcoming trends, some of which you may have heard of, and some of which you may have not when it comes to innovation. So we're excited to share that as well. In terms of format, we're doing this on a Zoom call. And as much as this comes off as a presentation, we love to get questions from you, from the audience. And so we would like for you to be able to participate in this event by typing in questions in the chat. We do have a strict timeline that we're going to be following here, but as time allows, we'd love to be able to answer any questions you have as they come up during a presentation or in a panel discussion. And so if you would type your questions in the chat, and we will relay them here and answer them as time allows. And then also, we will be transitioning between events to set up different panel discussions. So we'll take slight pauses in between discussions so we can get set up. So just to give you a sense for how the format works for today and the next couple of days. Okay, well, with that, I think we can go ahead and jump in. I'm going to be talking to you first a little bit about sustainability as a strategic differentiator. My name is Lucas Knapp. I lead our product and market development teams here in HARTING Americas. And sustainability has been a big topic for a lot of companies. I have to be honest, when I first got into the sustainability topic, it felt mostly like people like to say these big words and put a lot of things on the internet about how great their companies were. when it comes to sustainability, but what I've been impressed with is what companies have really been doing to drive sustainability and having, specifically on a carbon footprint side of things, a much better footprint. And so I want to talk a little bit about what is sustainability and how it could be a strategic differentiator. So for the last, 100 years, we've been through this industrial revolution and longer, you could argue that the basis of a transaction with a customer was really based on these four things: quality of your products, the price that the customer is going to pay, and the lead time that they are going to get that product. Over and over and over, you could emphasize more on quality, you could emphasize more on price, you could emphasize more on lead time, or perhaps a fourth one, just relationship. Like you're the one that has a relationship with the customer, and so you're the one that's going to be preferred. And this has played out over and over and over, and you can see these four attributes being played over in every transaction that has gone on in the history of our industrial revolution, if you will. But there seems to be a fifth one emerging, and we have seen it play a bigger part in the last couple of years. And as we look into the future, we talk to our customers and our end users. Having sustainability be a fifth element of the key purchase criteria seems to be an emerging item and one that will differentiate you in the future. We are having customers talk to us about, do you know what your carbon footprint actually is? Or what are your sustainability goals? And we have started to see some of this filter into the purchase decision criteria from our customers, and surely for yours as well. So what is sustainability and how can we impact this? Let's just get into it a little bit. Okay, what is sustainability? It's been defined in three different categories. One is inside your four walls, which are classified as scope 1 and scope 2. And I'll go into this in a little bit. And then there's outside of your four walls, which is scope 3. Okay, so we'll go into what scope 1, 2, and 3 are if you are not familiar with that. And then also for most of today, we're going to be talking about the sustainability within your product design and your product carbon footprint as well. And so today's panelists, after I'm finished, will be covering this topic. Okay, so scope 1 and 2. What is this exactly? Okay, so scope 1, it all has to do with your direct company asset usage, if you will. What is the emissions? So let's talk about carbon emissions specifically. What are the amount of emissions that are created from the products that you're creating inside your four walls and what you're doing? And scope 2 is the energy that you're using, the quality of the energy that you're using to conduct those processes. So let's say you have an injection molding machine. Well, certainly that injection molding machine is going to emit emissions as it's in use. And then it's also going to consume electricity as it's in use. So those two things would be scope 1 and scope 2. So the quality of the energy that you purchase also determines how much CO2 emissions you're using. So imagine if you're using the energy off the grid, then whatever source of the energy from the grid is that you're getting is the quality of the energy. And of course, if you're one of those companies now that's using either wind energy or solar energy on site as a source for your electricity, that improves your CO2 emissions that you're using on the scope 2 front. Hopefully this is all kind of starting to make some sense. So this is in many people's minds the most important area to focus their sustainability efforts. So as a company, you get together and say, okay, what can we do to improve our footprint? And generally, people look at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. How can we improve our processes? Should we upgrade, as you can see on the slide, should we upgrade our fleet of cars to electric vehicles, for example? Should we put solar panels on the roof or maybe a windmill outside, as you can see in many places excuse me, let's say in Germany, you see it very often. And these are all important things, very much so. We were working with a customer in the semiconductor space they use a very specific gas to conduct a very specific process within the semiconductor manufacturing process. And they realized how harmful this gas was to the environment, scope 1. And so what they're designing now is a new gas that's more environmentally neutral. And so they are working very hard on their scope 1 emissions to create a product and a process to be more beneficial to the environment. These are great things. What is surprising to most people, and it was surprising to me when I learned this, was that the entirety of scope 1 and scope 2 emissions amounts to about 3% of the total emissions created from a manufacturing process to finally get goods from the source all the way to the customer. And there are different estimates out there. This one comes from the World Economic Forum and also from customers that we've talked to directly on their own estimates. And so while you can focus all of your energy, or a lot of energy, on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which is still the right thing to do and what your suppliers are doing, what is also of importance is scope 3. Let's just talk a little bit about scope 3 and what that means. Again, about the remaining 97% of emissions created by a supply chain come outside of your four walls. So what does this mean? This is all around what your, basically two things, what your suppliers are using to, in terms of their emissions, and then also the supply chain, getting products from the source all the way to the customer and the amount of emissions created throughout that supply chain. It's an incredible amount of emissions created just from your supply chain. So when you're thinking about, okay, how could we differentiate ourselves from our competition in terms of sustainability, having a focus not only on your own internal emissions, but your supply chain is going to have a big improvement. My guess is that maybe a third of you, the companies that you work for, have started to actually calculate this on your own. And the other 2/3 of you are saying, we know what happens inside of our four walls, but we don't actually know what happens in our supply chain. And I'll tell you that if you are one of the first ones to do this, you will have an advantage. We're seeing it ourselves, and I know if we're seeing it, you'll be seeing it as well. Okay, let's just go through an example here. I want to bring this home on a very, very simple example. Imagine you're making a cable with and adding two connectors on the end. You just have a simple cable assembly beginning to end. If you were to run this process, if you were just wanted to build this cable assembly, you're gonna the foundational element here is copper, I think we all know. So let's say we source copper from Escondida, Chile, from a mine that you can imagine would be the largest copper mine still in the world. We ship this product to China where it gets processed. We add on two connectors on the end, maybe do some overmolding, and now we have the final product. We test it, and then we ship it back, let's say, to a customer in Northern California. If we ship this by boat, this is roughly a little over 80,000 pounds of carbon emissions. What does that mean? Is that a lot or a little? Well, let's just see how it compares to the rest. Okay, if we were to take this is a very simple example, of course, right? You can imagine all of the other products that are needed for industrial Ethernet, like the magnetics, or like the plastic parts, or the connectors themselves. All of these parts, if you start to draw these arrows from where the source is to where the manufacturing is to where the distribution is to where it will finally be consumed, ends up being lots of arrows on the page. And what's surprising is the amount of product that we're shipping over and over and over and over. So this is just the most simple example for demonstration purposes. Let's say we were to build that same harness and we were to source the copper from a mine in Arizona. And then we ship that to Mexico, where we can actually build the cable, we can build the connector, do the assembly, and we ship it to that same customer in Northern California, all by truck. It's about 11,000 pounds of carbon emissions. It's an incredible reduction in just the supply, just by moving around the supply chain from where we're sourcing the products all the way to where we're consuming it. And you can see that, again, you can imagine if we added all the other arrows on the chart and all the other carbon emissions created from all the other components and the plastics and what's not, everything else to create this cable assembly. The magnitude at which you can impact your footprint from a sustainability perspective is significant, just by localizing your supply chain. Okay, so again, simple example about if we ship by boat, we use about 112,000 pounds of carbon emissions. When you need that product really bad and we need to rush ship, we're not in that environment right now, but you can imagine 2 years ago, we were very much in this environment where we needed products very quick. Air shipment was one of those things that we did quite often. And probably in 6-9 months or so, we're going to be in an environment again where the demand will be picking up, and this will be a desire, right, to ship through air. This same product, only one product, one route from Chile to China and to Northern California, about 985,000 pounds of carbon emissions. For reference, this is just mind-boggling. For reference, if you had 73,000 cars on the road in the USA that drove 15,000 miles on average per year, that's about the same as 985,000 pounds of carbon emissions. I mean, it's just incredible the amount that we're spending in carbon emissions to ship products from around the world. And our ability to localize the supply chain, one of the many elements to impact Scope 3, would allow us to have something more like 11,000 pounds of CO2. So again, simple example, but multiply this across all the products that you're purchasing, all of the sourced components, and the amount becomes significant. So I want to go back to the first chart I showed: relationship, quality, price, lead time. These will all continue to be at the top of everyone's mind when it comes to selling your products to your customers. But it looks like sustainability will be a new one, and your ability to quantify within your, again, within your four walls, but also among your supply chain, what's happening from a carbon emission standpoint, it will be a differentiator in the future and can give you an advantage over your competition. So with that, the last thing I wanted to point out here is the lead time. So imagine if you're shipping product on boat to and from countries, on average, about 52 days, if things are running well, to get product in and out. So the amount of inventory that is just being carried on a boat to and from, in between all of these processing steps, is significant. So not only are we, in general, if we have a wildly complex, wildly global supply chain, not only are we emitting all of these emissions just in the supply chain, but we're also overproducing. We have lots of inventory just being carried on a boat and sitting in supply houses and distribution centers. About 52 days. Obviously, if you air freight, you can get something very quick, let's say 40 hours. And then in terms of shipment, you also reduce your lead times in general from localizing a supply chain. The point here is, in general, the benefits of having a localized supply chain not only come from the carbon emissions you create from that supply chain, but also the costs and the lead time as well. So these do actually tie together quite well, and understanding them is the first place to go.